Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Spring into Summer, sponsored by PAL Ottawa. I'd like to welcome you all here today for a very unique presentation entitled My Father, My Daughter, Living in Harmony with Nature. This is a very special presentation because our two featured presenters are a father and daughter. And this, when PAL Ottawa booked Simon and Mari, it was a real surprise because it's coming right at, about a week and a half after Father's Day. And I thought it would be just a wonderful coincidence or serendipity to have them present today. Spring into Summer, most of you probably know this, is a featured presentations that cover the arts as well as non-arts. And it started in May, and it's going to continue actually into early July. It was supposed to end on the 30th of June, which is tomorrow, but due to some scheduling issues, we're extending it to I guess the first or second week of July. So I would encourage you to check out our website, palottawa.org, for additional programming that has yet to be put up. I believe there's a couple of presentations that will be uploaded. Sorry, not the presentations themselves, but the promos for the presentation. So I would encourage you to do that. This presentation is being recorded. You can remain on camera or not. It depends on what your preference is. And the presentation will be later uploaded to our PAL Ottawa YouTube channel. I would encourage you to go to that if you'd like to watch the presentation again. And you can certainly encourage your family and friends and colleagues to visit the site. And when you look at the videos, please hit like, and if you have any comments, and write your comments in, and please share and hit subscribe. That'll give you a chance to receive notifications of other videos that are going up. So that's something we're very, very proud of. Now, to our presenters. Our two presenters, as I mentioned to you, are a daughter and father, or father and daughter, but we'll begin with Mari. Mari Brascoupé is a member of the Kitigan Zibi First Nation, and Mari was born and raised in Ottawa, having done her Bachelor of Design at Ryerson University in Toronto in fashion and costume making. Mari was interested in applying her Indigenous culture to her design practice and continued to do this during her Master of Arts at Central St. Martin's in London, England. With the aim of decolonizing research approaches and the design process, Mari brings traditional knowledge into academic and design spaces. She continues to bring Indigenous artists and students into the arts at the National Arts Centre as their Indigenous cultural resident. Now, her father, who is also with us, is Simon Brascoupé. Simon is a Kitigan Zibi Anishinabeg artist living in Algonquin territory here in Ottawa. He has completed public art, including Algonquin Birch Bark Basket at Abinan Place, a large mural for the Heart Institute, Ottawa, and a mural at Carleton University's Indigenous Student Center. He is completing 2 large public artworks for the Pimisi Station, Mamawi, together paddle installation painted by 100, that's 100, Algonquin artists and Algonquin moose. His artistic vision is to have a significant presence in public art and institutions for Algonquin and Indigenous art and culture. Simon's artistic vision is to communicate traditional teachings and values through the continuity of imagery and narrative. Simon's work has been exhibited in the United States, Canada, Europe, China, Japan, and Cuba. He is represented in the collections at the Canadian Museum of History and the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., and major corporate and private collections. He is presently in an exhibit at the National Gallery of Canada's Canadian and Indigenous Art exhibition. Simon Brascoupé's work reflects his respect for the Algonquin territory and land. From Simon's perspective, animals teach humans how to see the world through their eyes and actions. For example, Simon's father taught him that the bear, when it's wounded, will use the sap from a pine or cedar tree as medicine. And Algonquin teaching is that even though the bear is large, it lives lightly on the land. It's a beautiful and interesting concept. Aboriginal people traditionally have learned by listen and learn from the animal world and nature for their profound insight and knowledge. The ability to observe is central to the artist's vision of living in harmony with nature. Without further delay, let's give a warm round of applause and welcome to Mari and Simon. Over to you, Mari.
Okay. Hopefully my connection seems a little choppy, so you can let me know if it cuts out at any point. Hi, I'm Mari Brascoupé. I am a designer and artist. I think I've taken on the artist title, I think, more recently, as my work kind of traveled from design more into art. I'm also a bead worker. I'm Algonquin. I work at the National Art Center in Ottawa, and I've been doing art, I think, almost my entire life. And I'm really interested in the connection between our relationship with the land, and expressing that through my art, and also expressing traditional knowledge and familial knowledge that is, passed down through the generations into my work, so that it's sort of, preserved for generations to come. So I'm excited to talk about my work, our work, and talking more about the project that we've done together. And I'll let my dad introduce himself in his own words.
So Kwekwe, hello. Well, I wish I had written what David said. I want to get a copy of it. It sounds really good. Anyway, so thanks, David. This is an interesting topic because I always act surprised, or I am surprised that so many of my children have become artists. In many ways, they've all become artists. But I've got 3 visual artists, one in film, one's a medical artist. She's a doctor, and another one is a coffee artist connoisseur. So it's all in creative fields. And I think the one thing that I think is difficult for a lot of people to grasp is the relationship that Indigenous people have with the land. And I think, as David really said it well, that you'll hear these stereotypical things that are said about Indigenous people or Native people having a connection to the land, but it's real. We love Mother Earth, and our culture enables that to to happen. And I guess that's what a lot of artists are trying to get across, particularly these days, that you know, the world is really at a crossroads where do we really want to live sustainably? Do we really want to live in harmony with nature? Do we really want to have a better world for our 7 generations to come? And so I don't really see it as, those kinds of changes of course, will happen gradually. All our ancestors, your ancestors, all lived in harmony with nature. We've only been in the Industrial Revolution for a few hundred years, and the kind of the world that we live in for, Westerners, for several hundred years. But Indigenous people are still close to the land in a culture and linguistic way. So I'm going to turn it back to Mari because we have some visuals. We're going to talk about art, the art that we're working on together, but also about the idea of finding that balance between the natural world and the world that we live in. So, so this one is interesting. For when I did it, my father had just passed away, and each of the little dots there represent the number of years that my father lived on this earth. And he passed on a lot of things to me. He was also an iron worker. And so one of the things as I was growing up, he would say, never let anyone think they own you. And he grew up he didn't go to residential school, but he went to the day school, which was run by the church. And I guess they were pretty abusive to him. And so he understood that, we have to be free as human beings. And the other thing he taught me was when I was iron working with him, this high steel stuff, he said, Simon, never put yourself in a position where you could get killed. That's really 2 pieces of really good advice. And so when I did this, it's an underwater serpent, and the underwater serpent lives in the Ottawa River, the big river, Kitigan Zibi, and the underwater serpent is responsible for the waves. That's what makes the water run. It's quite dangerous. And in the past, and even today, people will tell their children, don't go into the water until the thunderbird scares away the underwater serpent. And as a parent, what you're concerned about is your children in the water early spring, and it's full of bacteria from the winter. So they shouldn't be in the water anyways. And the water is flooding a lot of times. So it's very dangerous. So it becomes less dangerous when we get the thunder and lightning. And that's the cutoff point. You can say, okay, it's safe now. And so you could see that our oral history has these wonderful stories and narratives that provide us with knowledge about living safe with the natural world. So I'll turn it back to Mari.
Yeah, so I'll talk about one of the projects that I did. Well, this was my master's project, which was sort of also talking about the relationship between, us and the stories that were told and the importance of them. It was a beaded varsity jacket, and I was talking about sort of the relationship between being in educational institutions and valuing the knowledge that is passed down through storytelling and not through books, and how in Indigenous communities those those stories and that knowledge is, equally as important as academic text, and that we should be valuing these things in places of higher education, which I think we're making progress, but it was a bit of a battle to get people to agree with me on that one. But for myself, it was the first big project that I was really engaging with a sort of traditional art form, which is beading. And within my research about beading, that it is an art form that has deep connections to both the natural world. Beads originally were made out of shells in this territory, anyways, made out of shells and quills, porcupine quills, which I haven't done quill work. I'm a bit afraid to, but and then post contact made out of glass. But also beadwork is supposed to be a representation of stories and of a place, the place where you are in the moment that you're beading it. And I really liked beading stuff that was, about really reflecting on education and what I've learned from my dad and what he's learned from his family. So there's lots of beaded patches on there that are stories from my family. There's one in there that's which I will be talking about more later, but the Three Sisters, which is corn, bean, and squash, and they're sort of the short form of the story is that you plant them together and they grow better together. Like they work together to help each other grow to their biggest potential. And I just like that sentiment. And so it's a patch on the jacket itself. So there's sort of more detailed bits of the project. But so I do a lot of different stuff in different mediums, a lot of beadwork, a lot of digital stuff, a lot of more so now printmaking. I don't stick to one type of type of art, but it always is a reflection of either familial stories or our relationship to the land, specifically from this territory, from Ottawa, and like really getting to know what grew here and how it's reflected within the knowledge that we share. I'll hand it over to you, Deb.
Okay, so this was this is a wayfinding symbol, and it's a project that we'd been working on for 8 years, and it just got unveiled a couple of weeks ago on June 21st, which is Indigenous Peoples Day here in Canada, in Ottawa. And I worked with elders and community members. So I went on the Ontario side and the Quebec side, spoke to elders and asked them what they would like to see in this symbol. And I think it's, so they were, two animals there. And I kind of cut them off at that number because I think I could have had 100 animals in there. So animals were important. The symbol of the birch bark canoe, that is iconic Algonquin way of transportation up and down the rivers. There are, you can see at the bottom one, there's like a red, it looks like a wave going over the canoe. And that is a plant. In the spring, these plants unfurl from like a spiral. So there were all these images in there. And the top is a spearhead. And Algonquins, as far back as 5,500 years ago, made tools out of copper. So that's a copper spear point, which is probably about 5 inches long. And so I went, and the design really transformed. For the first couple of years, I had quite a different kind of design. It came from pictograph rock art in the region. But one of the elders at one of the meetings I went to said they felt it was too sacred to show it in a way like this. So I restarted it, and the moose in the middle is a story that my father told me. He had gone hunting with one of my uncles. There's a fairly large park just north of Kitigan Zibi. And my dad said, "Oh, we saw these two birds, and they're known as whiskey jack or wasajak in Algonquin, and they're Canada jays or gray jays, and they're quite friendly. And these birds will sit right in your hand." Anyway, so my uncle tells the wasajak, "Go and get me a moose." And so my dad and my uncle are sitting in their truck kind of all day, and it had just snowed, and off the Canada jays had flown. And my dad said just before the sun went down, the two birds come back, and following the birds are this moose. So that I created that image, and in the material, I try to encourage people to bring their own stories to this image. Pretty well, most Canadians have a moose story. There's moose all over the place, and they're quite dangerous on the road, particularly in this area. If you hit one, you're in big trouble. And then the other thing is that this wayfinding symbol is really symbolic. It's Algonquins talking to people in Ottawa, visitors, that this knowledge that's embedded in these symbols and this narrative is to help people find their way, to understand nature more, to learn from the natural world and from our region. And it's installed on a rock, and in many indigenous cultures, the rock is called our grandfather. We call it our grandfather boulder, or our grandfather rock, because it's really an old, as you all know, rocks are quite old. And so there's really two elements here. One is the boulder, and the boulder is a wayfinding landmark or mark that people would have used. The whole region, the entire Ottawa region, has these boulders everywhere that came from from glaciers. As the glaciers went north, they would drop these rocks and all through the region. So those of you who live in Ottawa or outside of Ottawa will find these rocks. And so that's a little bit about, what a dad. This is a father-daughter thing. And really, this art is really Mari's art. So I did all the sketching, the animals, and kind of the concept, but Mari did all the digital renderings, selected the colors. It took one summer out to get the animals just right. So we start with a turtle on the Mother Earth's on the back of a turtle. So you got fish, mammals that live in the water, birds that live in the water, mammals, bears, birds that live in the sky, and even in there is a chickadee, a few chickadees actually, which is the unofficial bird of Ottawa. But anyway, so this work would have not been possible without the collaboration of Mari and myself. So I'll turn it back to Mari.
Thanks. Yeah, it was a long project. I have many files that were named final in the final 1, final 2, final 3, because we thought we got there a few times. But yeah, it was done collaboratively. We got pieces of paper, and then I started putting it together in Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator, and it got eventually to what it is today. I enjoyed that project. I guess I can talk about this project a bit. This is the Mamawi Together canoe, which it talked about at the beginning of this 100 canoe paddles that form the shape of a canoe. My one is the third from the front. The two in front of me are two of my other sisters' paddles. This is also a long project. We went around to Algonquin communities. I was at quite a few of the workshops with the artists, talking about color theory mainly during the painting process. And for mine specifically, I was really interested in the waterways, especially where that is. We have lots of different waterways that connect in Ottawa, and I really, in a lot of my work, like to look at water and its importance between us and how it connects communities. Without water, a lot of our communities wouldn't be connected. And I think if you look at a lot of major cities, a lot of them are by waterways because it makes trade easier. But yeah, so that was my contribution to the project. Dad, you want to talk more about it as holistically working with all those artists?
Yeah, so we went around to Algonquin communities in Ontario and Quebec, and so I sent out like a little flyer, and I say looking for artists, and I knew that a lot of artists didn't see themselves as artists. We've got this Western view that you got visual arts, painting, and sculpture. But a lot of the beaters, carvers, a whole range of basket makers, canoe makers produce these beautiful art. And so I was able to get into this dialogue about Algonquin art. So a lot of the artists here, some of them had 50, 60 years of producing art. Moccasin makers, canoe makers, people that carved. One guy is a really well-known, works is an artisan. I would call him an artisan, and he painted with a toothpick because he didn't like the brush, so he used a toothpick. Anyways, he produced a really beautiful painting, and then we weren't directing the artists. The artist was allowed to paint whatever they wanted. So we've actually got a website. One of my daughters made a website with all the paddles on it. There's a painting of the paddle. There's a little bio on the artist, what the title of their work was, and their inspiration. And so you have 100 stories here, and there's a few family members in some of the paintings, and one family was saying that they were taken away to residential school when they were young, and they were afraid to speak their language, even when they came home, because I thought somebody would break into their home and take them away again. And as they became adults, they started decolonizing and healing themselves by doing art, Algonquin art, as a way to go through their own healing process. And so one way to look at healing is one of my students did a thesis, and she talks about these 4 different lodges. And the first lodge is Talking Lodge. And all healing starts with talking. Say you had a disagreement with a good friend of yours, and so you talk, and you listen to each other. And then the second lodge is the listening and learning lodge. So you've listened to your friend and you're learning, they listen to you and they're learning, and that's part of the healing process. The third lodge is the healing journey that you both go on. And then the fourth lodge is finding that balance in your life. And a lot of Indigenous people and elders use that as a healing method. So this is called Mamawi, and the idea is that you can't paddle a canoe on your own. There's always somebody else. You need somebody in the front, somebody in the back. And you can see on the far right, there's a paddle with a beaver on it. So, we heard this from more than one person. They would say, at one time, Algonquin people did not have canoes, but somebody was cleaning a beaver one day, and the inside of the ribs inspired the making of a birch bark canoe. Because when you look at a birch bark canoe or any canoe, if they're made from wood, you see these ribs. And all these paddles are beaver tail paddles. So we have kind of 2 kind of paddles: the beaver tail, which is used on lakes and rivers, and then you have an otter tail, which has got a pointier paddle to it, which is used to push yourself around rocks, like in small streams and places where there's rapids. So so that I encourage you to go to Pimisi Station, have a look at it. I'll turn it back to Mari.
Yeah, so speaking of Pimisi Station, this was another piece that we did there. It's their sort of window art, and it's digitized birch bark bitings. And I should have some birch bark with me. Birch bark biting, for those who don't know, is I would argue one of the earliest forms of mark making in North America. And it's when you take a really thin layer of from a birch tree, like really, really thin, like paper, even thinner than paper, and you fold it like you'd fold a paper snowflake, and then with your teeth, literally biting, you perforate or sort of indent the birch bark, and then when you open it up, it sort of reveals a design. And a lot of people, when you do it, ask, like, do you have any idea what you're doing? Because you can't really see what you're doing. And to that I say, like, sort of. We were told by a few people that it's the creator working through you to sort of create a design. And I tend to do flowers. I like flowers generally. Oh yeah.
I'll do one while you're talking.
Sure. And so traditionally they were used for storytelling, like as sort of a visual image of whatever story you're trying to tell, or they were used as patterns for beadwork. And they're very beautiful. Some people are better at making more like literal images, but they all tell a story. And I can show you some of what the original pieces before they were digitized look like. So this is one that my dad did, which is the one that is at the National Gallery. And as you can see the lines of where it was folded, and you can see the teeth marks in it. And it's kind of like for some, it's like a Rorschach kind of test. Everyone sees what they want to see within the image. We were talking about how it's, you can see, maybe you see teepees. This is it women and children dancing around the sun is what you named it. So, you know, there's the women with their children on the outside, and there's the sun in the middle, or teepees, or because some people see a buffalo skull in there as well, if you're reversing the image. So they're a way to tell stories, and I think it's a really interesting art form that not a lot of people do. There's very few people that do it. I think it is having a bit of a resurgence. So there's more people doing it than before, or at least sharing it. Yeah, that's when it's folded. You can open up what I did one yesterday, but it's downstairs. The slow reveal. You catch more of the light behind it, which they look really cool in the light, because since it's like slightly perforated, the light shines through those spots more than the regular birch bark. And this is the one that I did, which is again chickadees. I like chickadees. With oh yeah, take the phone light. Yeah, you can see where it's bitten, and it's really strong. The birch bark paper, I guess, is really strong, and that's why you're able to bite through it. It takes more pressure than you think. Although some people, I told them that when I've been trying to teach them how to do it, and they've completely ripped it apart. So there's a balance there. But a lot of the stories within the birch bark writings are again surrounded about nature and our relationship with nature, and the symbiosis between different elements, like in this one, like the having birds and pollinators with flowers. You know, you need flowers to be pollinated in order for you know, our food systems to survive. And you know, that's as much as it being beautiful, it's important to know that those relationships and why they're important. And another thing that I did with them, I got really into, I was digitizing everything, which I still do. I like digitizing stuff. But I digitized first my dad's birch bark binding, and then we made it into a rhizo print. And rhizo is a pretty cool form of offset printing, which they create a sort of stencil, and it's brought through a machine, and they use colored ink, so it's not just the YMK. It's like, if you're going for that sort of tealy green, like it's just the tealy green. And they every color is a different run through the printer. So the green is printed, and then I'm pretty sure that was purple. Purple was printed after. So it's a pretty cool printing process. I highly recommend people do it. Yeah, so we decided to do some prints using Rhizo, and it also evokes some of the other indigenous artistic practices, like birch bark basket making, which they create designs using stencils on the birch bark baskets. So they take thicker than the paper birch bark and tie it together, and then on the surface of the baskets they would use stencils and then scratch around it, and within that scratching it reveals the lighter or darker color underneath, and then you get the design. So this process is sort of evoking both the two different birch bark artistic practices within one piece. Dad, if you want to say anything else about it?
I just can make a quick comment from the chat. They were saying that it reminded them of the new logo for the National Gallery.
Yeah.
So I was actually on the committee that was asking the gallery to come into this new era of reconciliation. So we had this idea of at Kose, which means everything is connected, everything's related, which is reflected in here, what Mari just talked about. And so their logo reflects that, and it does remind me of a birch bark biting. Anyways.
Yeah, I love their new logo.
Yeah.
So that's my version. And then this is a more recent adventure in Rhizo printing, did recently. I don't know, Dad, you want to talk about how you got to this one?
Yeah. So there was there's a collection of birch bark cutouts. So they would our ancestors would take a birch bark, and you would cut it out and say it was make a plant out of it, and then they would take that plant, as Mari talked about earlier, that stencil or that template, and they would scratch around the template to create an image of a plant or an animal. And so we were talking about doing another series of prints, and Mari was working on using these old templates or old cutouts, and I went, I know exactly what I want to do. So Mari inspired this. So I cut these out of paper, and then Mari did all the hard work in doing the digital side of it, including getting the printing done in Glasgow. And so each one of these are medicinal plants. So I call it Algonquin medicinal plants. Yeah.
Yeah, and there are other places other than Glasgow to get your to get Rhizo printed. There's places in Canada as well, but I found a place while I was doing my master's in England, and I just really liked them. So I continue to get my stuff printed in Glasgow.
Well, plus they have software that you could use online to kind of create what it's going to look like, and selected colors, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, their user experience is good.
Yeah.
This is another project that we worked on together. As I said, I work for the National Art Center Indigenous Theatre Department, and our first year was in September of 2019. Our first season was cut short, but we started off well with a festival called Mushkamo, and when we wanted to name the festival, we wanted to give it an Algonquin name, because the NAC is on Algonquin territory, and our department, even though we're Indigenous, not all of us are Algonquin. I think at the time, maybe a third was Algonquin, and then we had our artistic director and managing director from the West Coast. So it's still, even though we're on the territory, it's important for them to acknowledge that they're as Indigenous people from the West Coast are still guests on our territory. So we wanted to give the festival an Algonquin name, and we went up to KZ and met with Algonquin language speakers to see if they could gift us a name. And I had a name in mind when I went to them. I looked in I don't speak Algonquin, but I looked in the Algonquin lexicon, and I found something that I was like, oh, I like the feeling of this word. And they were like, no, it kind of sounds like this word, and we don't really like that word. And so maybe we should come up with something else. And I was a little disappointed, but ultimately the word that they chose was much better than my word. So I told them, we wanted to focus on how Indigenous art has been in existence for, forever. But, only now at the National Art Center anyways, was getting put on a national stage and getting this sort of spotlight. So it's been, oh yeah, it was made into a scarf. So it's been under the surface for a long time, and it was coming out to show the work, and we're around water, around the waterways. Everybody's meeting, as I said before. I love waterways and how they facilitate people coming together. And so they suggested this word bushkamo, which means something from underneath the water revealing itself. And it could be a beaver, it could be an otter. But it was when they were telling us this word, it was very theatrical in the way that they were telling us, like the elder Joe got out of his seat and sort of mimicked the beaver coming out of the water. So that was sort of the inspiration of this design. Dad, you want to add to it?
Well, I really immediately in my imagination, I could see the beaver. It could have been a fish. It could have been a loon coming out of the water. That was our first theater. As many of you know, animals. We talked about this earlier. Animals teach us things, and in this design, so everything in this design means something. We have an otter there, and at one time, so we're from the bear clan. You can see the bears there. So the bear got all the animals together, and the bear said, well, we've got to teach humans how to live sustainably and how to live on the earth using natural law. And natural law is, if you leave nature alone, everything we get all the things that we need from nature, and it's sustainable. And so the otter said, well, I could teach humans about getting along with each other, that they by behavior, because an otter is a very gentle animal. In fact, I saw one this winter. I was pleasantly surprised to see when it poked its head out, bushkamo, out of the ice, and the otter will live with a beaver if in the winter, if it's a particularly bad winter. But in this design, you see waves, and what we're told is that there's a beadwork design It's called the otter tail design. And there's two types of designs. So one of them is an up and down. You can see it in this design, the up and down two lines. And relationships aren't a straight line. It's not perfect. All our relations go up and down for a lot of different reasons. And this is reflected in beadwork, this symbol, and indigenous people that beaders say, oh, that's an otter tail design. The other type of otter tail design is one where you get a straight line, and then you get this kind of a diamond shape, and then it becomes a straight line. So that's a fairly common bead design. Anyway, so we could spend a day talking about the designs on this image, including the heart. You know, the heart represents love, but it's also the heartbeat of Mother Earth. We talked about loving Mother Earth earlier. So enough said.
And then sort of we don't have too much time left, but if you have questions, feel free to type them in the chat. It's sort of saying you know, what we're currently working on, or what's sort of next in line for us. I'm doing a street mural in Toronto, and again, it's waterways. Love waterways. You know, reflecting in Toronto specifically about making sure people, you know, remember where they're walking, especially with how much concrete there is in Toronto. I tell people a story when I was living there that there's some trees around my apartment and there was grass underneath, and I went to look at it and it was fake. I was like, even the grass around the trees is fake. So I've taken this opportunity to remind people that, you know, the origins of Toronto and the importance of the water, that everyone, you know, lives close by. And then also it includes the Three Sisters, the corn, beans, and squash, and the relationship that the waterways had with bringing those seeds to the territory, and how it was really important for the growth of that area. And so that's a project that will hopefully be done this summer. We'll see how things go. So if you're in Queen West after the summer, I'll have a sidewalk mural there. And yeah, so I think it's important even in concrete areas to reflect on the importance of nature and how it's gotten us to where we are. And Dad, did you want to talk about your next project?
So we're working on a project now that where will remain a secret, but it's a substantial one. So Mari did the birch bark binding. It's going to be like a 6 or 7 foot high birch bark binding, and so we're going to get steel and perforate it with a plasma gun and to create this birch bark binding. And so that's the next project. So this is what Mari's working on also. So there, myself and 3 of my daughters are working on this project. They take a long time to do.
Yeah, some things happen faster than others. But yeah, it was. Are there any questions? You can just ask out loud if you want.
Tokyo here. First of all, thank you. My face hurts from smiling, from just the way the two of you interact and how very human the explanations and the stories. And I'm supposed to be a writer as well. When I say that, it means I'm supposed to be writing, but there's a million other things to do. And one of which is I go to Bate Island I should be at home in California, but I got in Ottawa because of the apocalypse. That's a long story. But so I needed an island, and I found one. I found Bate Island, and the dog and I go there every morning about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning so we can watch the sunrise. And just that nature and the water. So Mari, I'm right with you on the water. Like that's I need to do that so the world is a safer place and I'm a nicer person for the rest of the day. But I'm part Finnish. So when you brought up the birch bark, which is birch trees and birch bark, that's all sacred to us. Like from the time I was little, I knew, that. And the biting thing is amazing. I've seen those, but I don't think I knew what they were or how they were made. So I'm grateful for really learning that. And I can't wait to go see all the pieces that you've shown because I have access to them here in Ottawa, which is nice. Anyways, just a lot of gratitude for what you've done, and I can attach myself to it. And I did live for a while in a cabin in Bolter by myself for 11 months with the dog. And there was also a lot of arts in that area. And I tried to access, I wanted to learn certain arts. And what I ran into in this one place was I was told it wasn't appropriate for me to learn these arts because it was, I don't know if I have the right word, I would be reappropriating an art, tradition, and culture. And I'm kind of not, I have no English right now. I'm I'm back on the island actually in my head. But I would, and I'm an artist as well. That's the best thing to make me do art is make me write, then I'll do art. So I would love to do some of this stuff or learn more about it, have access to it somehow. And I don't know how to go about doing that. So my intent is to email you later, see if I can just email you and ask you those questions and maybe get more an in-depth answer of what's possible and what's not possible. And you know what I mean? Because this has just been really, really lovely. And without nature, I lived in Toronto and it almost killed me because it was a sea of concrete.
Yeah.
There was a reason why I couldn't do it. But
Well,
anyways.
I think the birch bark biting, I don't know. I did a workshop for Mari at the NAC. I don't know. We're thinking of doing that again. I'm not sure, but I've done workshops on birch bark biting here in Ottawa before COVID.
Well, it'd be hard with the mask on.
Yeah, right. Unless it was made out of birch bark.
Right. Well, you know what? There's always that possibility. But it was a really. I just feel like my brain got access to things that it never would have gotten access to if Pal hadn't done this and you guys hadn't agreed to do it. And so glad I was able to come back on because it does make a difference participating live instead of just watching a replay of something.
Right.
So very, very grateful. Thank you to you both.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Yeah, I think it's important to, we all come from different places, or our family comes from different places. And I think it's really good to reflect on our historical relationships between ourselves and the places that we're from. And I think art forms, I teach beadwork to people as well. And I tell people that, I'm coming from my position as an Indigenous person to this art form, and the visuals that I'm using are a reflection of, a lot of my beadwork reflects nature, and we all have access to nature, but beadwork is in a whole lot of cultures. So but I think when we're working in spaces where beadwork specifically, making sure that people aren't doing it to mimic other artists. We even in our own community, we have people that are copying other people's designs, and I think it's really important to really understand your position within sort of the artistic context, and really bring yourself to the work. And I think as long as people are doing that and know who they are in relation to the work. I think it's always good to explore different types of artwork. But yeah, I don't know if that's a really good explanation.
No, I know it was a very good explanation, and because respect is the first thing that I bring to it, because quite frankly, I have been given a lot I've lived all over the world, and because of respect and coming to something with gratitude, I've always been given the grace of getting information that, I mean, later when people go, well, how'd you get to do that? Like, maybe it wasn't, you know what I mean? It's like I asked, and I asked in a certain way, and my intent, and I think my motive was clear, and the gifts that come from that have been amazing. So yeah, and I also loved, so you got 5,500 years or more of like how simple, how much more simple can it get than biting on a piece of birch bark and creating this amazing art. And then you go to this rhizo printing, which I've never heard of, and I don't need another medium to work in, but of course now I'm like really interested in that. But I just like that it has so much history, and bringing it into today where it just flowed perfectly. So it was beautiful stuff. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Welcome.
We have an interesting comment from Anne Carlisle, and Anne is saying, I read Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer recently, bracket, another inspiration for us all. And she's really enjoying the sense of connection and convergence, which is really is what your work is truly about. What I'm amazed at, you know, what's really interesting about your work is that it teaches us that we really need to slow our thinking down. And, you know, Mari, you said an interesting thing that even in Toronto, I lived in Toronto as well for 28 years, and all that, and I saw a lot of changes in the city, all that concrete that you see around you, you know, and suddenly you might see a tree growing someplace, and you just see a tree, you know, you walk by, oh, just a tree. And you have to, it's like you really have to slow your mind down and say, well, that's a tree, it's growing, it's part of nature. There was a lot more nature there before all this concrete went, you know, was given or provided. And we need to transform our thinking and slow it right down to what the basics are, which is really realizing that we're not the center of the universe. You know, nature is really it, and how we have to respect nature and preserve it and learn from it to live a better, to live a more fulfilling life. It's not really that complicated when you think about it, but unfortunately it becomes complicated with people because we're so absorbed and distracted by the travails of everyday living, in particularly in urban environments.
Yeah, well, even, I mean, I spent a lot of the pandemic on my lunch breaks walking around our neighborhood, and because I would do the same route every day, you'd notice the like smallest change in things growing, and like I learned so many different plant names as I saw them grew. And I was also doing a project on Indigenous language and coloring pages, and you know, June is in Anishinaabe means strawberry moon, and it's supposed to reflect that, you know, June is the month that the strawberries you know, are ready to eat. And I just thought that was great. And then I started noticing like, oh yeah, like I see strawberries in the neighborhood, and then July is raspberries, and August is blackberries. And as we got into those months, I would see these things bloom, and I'm like, like language is amazing. But I think becoming more observant to nature and just how like amazing it is. And being able to see it day after day and seeing it change and really like looking out for the relationship between the plants around us, just I found very inspirational for the work that I did. See that Sharon has a question.
Sure.
Hi. Yes, thank you for your amazing presentation. I something good and something bad, but it's the bad thing is since you've talked about the physical connection with nature. Well, I had been involved with a mural overseas in Mongolia with a Canadian native artist named Antoine Mountain, and from the Dene Nation. And he, when I was there 5 years ago, we had the concept of coming up with shared imagery between Canada and Mongolia. So obviously the landscape, the nature, the animals, how people live, people in there live in gers and tents that are sort of round and made of felt. And he used the imagery for the Indigenous Canadian homes, and that would be a parallel. But we worked with schools and had the children do stencils. So like when I saw all the different animals around, the idea that each animal or each thing that's an activity or home or a plant, it represents something, but children can make stencils and that sort of thing. But we were working on it together as two artists, and then the children would participate and do these stencils and everything. And that was like, that's the good news. Okay. It was the 40th anniversary of Canadian relations between Mongolia and Canada. And then the bad news is yesterday I saw them cutting down like a 50 or 100-year-old tree in my neighborhood. And I sort of heard this terrible noise. And then I thought, oh no, I knew they were thinking of developing something off of the corner close to Carleton University. And it was sort of I didn't think the tree was huge. I didn't think they were going to take this tree down, but they were already in process. So I started taking photographs, and the whole idea of, it was like a dissection of a human. It was like a dissection of a body, taking this tree apart. So I started taking pictures of this terrible thing, but I thought, because in that way, maybe I could bring that back, the idea of a connection between the whole tree and a whole being. And that looking at the way it was like, I don't know, like I said, it was at least 50 or 100-year-old tree. And it was so tall. And then how they took it down within a couple hours, it makes me cry, but I thought, I can't stop it, but maybe I can make some record of it and come back and put something together as a document, because just have that feeling of the loss of the tree, that one tree. But I always thought it was going to be there, and then it's gone. It's gone within a couple hours. It took 100 years to grow it, but it takes like hours to take it down. So I don't know, it's a sad thing, but the whole idea of how do you do work which kind of touches on this loss? I mean, that's the problem. It's people, you want to embrace the good, but how do you address this type of issue?
Well, I don't know if you smoke or have access to tobacco.
Yes, I appreciate that.
You could go over there and say a prayer give thanks to your appreciation for the tree, and for its life. Leave some tobacco for it.
Okay. It's like bearing witness to something that you cannot stop. But I could see, they used to call people tree huggers, and now I can see why you would wrap your tree. As a child, I used to wrap myself around trees just to feel the vibration.
Well,
yeah, I was like, close by there is a tree that they had taken down, and it's amazing how it just changes the skyline, and you're it is sad. I find that there's a Japanese concept of forest bathing, like where you go into a forest and it's supposed to be like cleansing. And I definitely feel that relationship with trees. Like I feel like I know the trees in our neighborhood, like, and it's really sad when they take them down. I think it's more and more common. But I do think in the work that I've done, and I'm like highlighting plants and highlighting nature, that like I hope it allows people to reflect on their relationship and the importance of those relationships, especially in neighborhoods where, you know, lots of people have relationships with the trees and the plants within our spaces, and they should be a more intrinsic part of urban planning, in my opinion. But I think that's something that more people should reflect on.
And you can see how young people, like I have an 18, 19-year-old, and she's like in her first year university, but she's just here visiting for a few days. And then, but a young person, how, you know, the earth and how it is torn from them. You know, it's like their future is being taken away. And you're right, it changes everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so with whether young or old, we all appreciate it. But I do sort of documentary work, but I have to say, but I feel like I don't like to dwell in the negative. I feel like I like to be more uplifting. So how do you take something negative and make it sort of turn it up to be more uplifting?
Well, I think somebody was talking about Robin Wall Kimberber's work. That's quite a good book because she talks about the relationship that we have with plants and animals. And so our Anishinaabe people feel that everything has a spirit. You know, rocks have a spirit, trees have a spirit, and we are related to all that. You know, if you want to take your science hat on, you know, we share about 18% of our chromosomes with plants. So we're related to plants in that way. And I think there's a lot of interesting books out now that have come out in the last 10, 15 years on trees. You know, The Secret Life of Trees, The Hidden Life of Trees. There's a couple of new ones out. And I think what's good about it is we're changing the narrative. People used to believe that trees were at war with each other, that you know, they were competing for sunlight, you know, and but now they're finding that trees communicate with each other chemically. Mari was talking about that, the forest bathing, but also electrically under the ground, you know, through the ground they communicate. And if a small tree's having difficulties, the larger trees will redirect sugar to that weaker tree. And Mari and I were walking in the trees this past weekend, and you could see the small maple trees were kind of like a flat, and all the leaves are faced up to catch all the sunlight it could, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So you could see the bigger trees were taking care of the younger trees, and even if you like birch trees, birch trees are endangered. You see them all around the city, but the birch trees, in order to reproduce, need the grandfather and grandmother trees, the big trees, because they are male and female, in order to reproduce. A lot of the smaller trees reproduce through roots, which isn't the best way to. Anyway, so that's my tree speech.
No, birch trees are very rare. I'm from Pennsylvania originally, immigrated like 30 years ago here, but it's like my brother loves birch trees, but you don't see them there anymore.
Yeah.
It's only Canada you see the birch trees.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they are threatened.
Mm-hmm.
I bought my house in Toronto, before I even saw it because there was birch trees in the front. Fortunately, everything else worked out too. But
Yeah. I,
yeah.
Mari's sister, my daughter, just bought a house, and the first thing she said is, "There's a birch tree in front of it." You know?
Yes. So I'm not alone.
Yeah, right.
Hmm.
Does anybody have any more comments or questions? Well, I'd really like to thank Simon and Mari for this presentation. This was really a treat. And I think I'm sharing the sentiments of the audience and of the people that will be watching this recording in the future. First of all, to have a father and daughter combo duo like this is really, really, really wonderful. The way you both work together on camera is just beautiful. You really got that down to an art, and we've learned so much from your presentation today. And if anything, that you know, we're all, as I said before, we people are not at the center of the universe. Nature is paramount to everything. We have to respect nature. We have to preserve it, protect it, and we must learn from it to make a better world. As we all go digital, which is fine, you know, in terms of things, but we really have to, you know, slow things down and appreciate the fundamental things in life, and nature. You know, nature gives us that. So your art is so inspiring, and the messages that you're conveying through your art are really beautiful. So thank you very, very much, Simon and Mari. It was really wonderful to have you here today.
Yeah, our pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Big Rich.
We will be sending out a survey to the people that attended today, as well as to everybody that registered for today's session but could not attend. And we would appreciate for those that did attend, and as well as people viewing this YouTube video in the future, if they could fill out the survey, because it informs PAL Ottawa as to our future programming. I'd like to thank our international audience, particularly Natasha from tuning in from the UK, and it's great that we're getting people from all over the world to attend our sessions. We will our next presentation is next Tuesday at 2 o'clock. It will be they will be Dawn Kwan and Barry Ace. Julie, I'd like to thank Julie for organizing that, Julie Hodgson, and they will be presenting along with a representative from CARFAC. And then our final presentation will be by Karen Oxhorn, who is a jazz musician, and she will be giving her session on Thursday, July 8th at 8 p.m. And that'll be a very special presentation because it'll be done through SyncSpace, which is a new technology. So that'll be really cool. And I would encourage you all to attend those future sessions. So again, thank you to Simon and Mari for an inspiring presentation. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you to the audience for attending. And hope to see you again. Have a lovely day and stay safe. Bye-bye.
Thank you.